Welcome to part 2 of January's Skill Builder Block of the Month. In part 1 I already talked about some of the tools that you're going to need and some of the things to expect and to do for this year's Block of the Month. And now we're going to actually get into which blocks we're making and what technique we're going to be using. Let me see here. I have my blocks here and they are currently basted. I just suggest that you baste with the method that you most often use or prefer. I personally like to spray baste when I'm doing small things like this. These blocks are perfect for me for spray basting, but I actually was all out of my spray baste when I was doing these blocks, so you can see that I have them pin basted right now. And I've been dabbling a little bit in thread basting, and that's something new to me, and I'm kind of figuring out how I like that too as well. But there's tutorials on the beginner's quilting series that I have on my blog for basting a quilt if you haven't already done that or if you're new to that. So go ahead and check that out. But each block will be basted with your own preferred method. And the first block that I have here is called the Sound Wave. And this is pieced with improv piecing. Now it looks pretty precise and it looks a lot like what was in the quilt, the full quilt picture that I showed you at the beginning of the block of the month. But it actually has some variation. It has some improv to it. And the second block that I have is called the Magnum. And again, it looks a lot like what was on the diagram that I gave you for the quilt. But again, too, it was pieced using improv piecing. And what's really fun about improv piecing is that you get to step out of the box and really add your own flair or little touches to a pattern or a tutorial or a technique. And so it can be really fun, but for some people it can be a little stressful. The thought of having to come up with measurements and having to come up with ideas on your own can be a little intimidating, but don't be afraid. This is the way that I'm doing it with these blocks is kind of an easy approach to improv piecing because I give you some direction and then kind of let you play a little bit on the other side of that. So you have freedom and you have some structure too to help you. One of the things I had noted before was to have a calculator in hand and a piece of paper and a pencil, and this will just help with a little bit of math that we'll be doing along with these blocks. One thing that I need you to do is just be willing to go with it. Willing to just try it out and to not worry about exact numbers or the exact size of each thing because it's really up to you. I want you to make it your own. Now when we're talking about color in these blocks, one of the things I will make sure I do in each lesson is kind of give you a little brief on how the color should be chosen. Some blocks, and I talked about this in the fabric and color choice post, but some blocks will need the colors to be the same value as what I had done in the quilt diagram. The reason being is because those values are actually adding an element of design to the block. For example, the diamond carrot block that I used for all of the advertising for the block of the month has different shades and different colors in different areas of the diamond so that it gives it the look of a 3D carrot diamond. And if you take that away and you were to just use all one color, you would not even see the 3D effect that it's trying to communicate. So what some of those blocks do, color is going to be really important. Then there's going to be some blocks where you're just free to use whichever colors out of the palette that you already chose. And this month, those are kind of the blocks. For the Magnum block, this was just totally preference for me. I used the guide from my original diagram and I went ahead and did the same dark orange and then the lighter orange, black, purple, and then the red. That was exactly what was in my diagram, but that's what I had envisioned. So this is really, you can play with it. You can use some prints and some solids, and you can use really whichever colors. It doesn't have to be a dark, a light, dark. You know, you can actually really play with it. One of the things that'll probably be the same in importance, if you notice about this block, is we have one piece here that's the background fabric, and then we have a slight strip that's the background fabric. And you may want to repeat that by having that be symmetrical or in a way. And then with the sound wave block, I wanted to kind of use this block to get all of my colors in. And so I used a bunch of different values of my purples and a bunch of different values of my oranges and a couple of the reds, and I really wanted it as an opportunity to kind of use all the colors. And again, this is up to you. If you had chosen 5 colors, you could do this block with 1 color in different values. You could do it in all 5 colors and just a couple values. You know, you could really play with it. These ones have a lot of freedom. It's not going to affect the way that the block looks design-wise greatly. It's not going to distort anything in any way. So just have fun with your color choices. And you'll notice too that on these blocks I have borders. And you can actually see that the block only comes to right here. And then the rest of this is a border. Now, when we finish our blocks, we'll chop them down or trim them down to 12.5 by 12.5. And then we will be adding a 2.5-inch strip border on the sides and on the top, all the way around. And the reason that we're doing this is because we're using the quilt as you go method. When you're doing that, you want to be able to quilt all the way off the edge of the block. But what happens is when you quilt on the edge of the block, you get distortion and pulling on the fabrics because it's right on the edge, and we really don't want that on the visible block. So what happens when we add the border is it actually allows you to quilt off the edge, and it doesn't affect the actual block that we made. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a 1-inch border outside of the 12.5-inch block, and we're going to mark it. You can sort of see here with my white chalk pencil. And then what we do is that's kind of just the guide, is you need to quilt at least up to that line or over it. And then when we trim down the block, we'll trim it on those lines, and it will come out to be a 14 by 14-inch block. That is how we are going to do the quilt as you go. Now, if you're just going to be piecing your blocks normal and you're not doing the quilt as you go method, then you just forget the borders. You don't need to add those. You would just piece your blocks as you always do. If you want to have sashing, you could add sashing around the blocks to have the same look that we're going to have. And then on the back, you'll see I've chosen just striped backing fabric for these two. And something that will actually help speed your process up a little bit would to be pre-cut your borders, pre-cut your batting, and pre-cut your backing. If you have those all cut out to begin with, it'll save you a lot of time, and I'm going to include in the course materials the sizes for all of those and how many you need to complete the whole entire quilt. So you have your 17 by 17 inch batting cut, you have your 18 by 18 inch backing cut in all of them. And so when you're done with the block, you can just whip out your borders, put them on, whip out your batting, your backing, and baste it. And you'll be ready for the free motion quilting lesson. So I hope you enjoy piecing improvisational for this lesson, and if you have any questions about it, just ask me on the Flickr group or email me at alyssa@pileofabric.com.